You are now tuned in to Go Time Dolphins with Charlie Touche and Kadeem Simmons, the Miami Dolphins podcast that's for the fans and by the fans.
Gotta make them lose their mind when it's your time. And it's showtime. Going all out when it's go time. I ain't wasting no time. Gotta make them lose their mind when it's showtime. Cause it's your time. Lay it on the line when it's go time. Don't waste no time.
Charlie. It didn't dawn on me until the intro was playing. Who were the last two players that the Go Time Dolphins intro show?
We're not gonna do this right now, Kadeem.
Dude, I'm watching it. I was like, oh.
We're not gonna do this. Listen. It's Go Time Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins podcast that goes not only across the pond but across the world. I'm your boy Charlie Touche. Got my co-host Kadeem Simmons with me. It's always for the fans and by the fans. Your favorite podcast, and free agency is among us, Kadeem. Everything we talk about isn't official until what, Tuesday or Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Until Wednesday. Everything isn't official until Wednesday. Sometimes you get things that get reversed and people back out and a glitch happened here and there. But it's not looking good for some of our favorite Miami Dolphins, Kadeem.
Shout out to IMAX in the comments. Says afternoon all. Shout out to Tim Caro. And yeah, so as of like 2-3 hours ago, legal tampering opened in the NFL. So teams can now start speaking to players. And within like 8 minutes of legal tampering, like DeAndre Swift has signed with the Chicago Bears. And every year it's like, there's no way you got this deal done within 8 minutes, but it is what it is. You know, I feel like we can't get into the Dolphins news without talking about some of the deals. No, forget the deals that happened around the league. The Dolphins heading to free agency, around 20 million over the cap. They released Jerome Baker, and you know, we know about X, we know about Ogba, you know, a few others. Heading into Monday's legal tampering, it was essentially what's happening with Christian Wilkins, what's happened with friend of the podcast, Brandon Jones, what's happening with Andrew Van Ginkel, what's happening with friend of the podcast, Robert Hunt. And within the last hour, all of those guys have moved on. So, Charlie, if you want to tell people where those guys are, if you know their contract, let me know. If not, I can put it up for you. But yeah, what do you make of the first few hours of free agency or legal tampering period?
This is what it looks like when you have a championship window and a quarterback on a rookie contract. You get to the end of that rookie contract and you would have liked to cash out. Like, you know what? We made the AFC championship twice during the rookie contract. We made it to a Super Bowl. We came on with a championship. But this is also what it looks like when you waste 2 of those years on that said quarterback with a defensive-minded head coach who put 4 or 5 different offensive coordinators around that rookie quarterback. So now you wasted 2 years of Tua's rookie contract, set us back, and lo and behold, we get a coach that knows what he's doing, and then we go to 2 straight playoff appearances. So we shot ourselves in the foot, missed out on 2 good years of Tua, and wasted 2 years of Tua's contract with Brian Flores, unfortunately. And this is what it looks like. You're going to lose players. You get to a point where Chris Grier has to play the juggling act, and we got to move some things around. And if you look at it, it looks like a lot of defensive players. Like, you know what? We're going to put money on the offensive side of the ball, and the defense is going to be the defense. You could scheme some stuff up and put the people in the right positions to succeed, and you should be able to win games. But the offense, analytics says, you have to have a top 5 offense to win Super Bowls. And the Dolphins have had top 6 offense 2 seasons ago in the league, and in the second ranked offense in the league last year. So we already know where the money's going on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, we're definitely gonna miss a friend of the podcast, Brandon Jones. Sounds like he's moving on to Denver. Friend of the podcast, Robert Hunt, sounds like he's moving on to Carolina. Who else we got that moved on? Kadeem.
Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel.
And Andrew Van Ginkel goes to Minnesota, and Christian Wilkins goes to the Raiders. Here's my thing about Christian Wilkins, bro. When Zach Sealer is playing the way he's playing, and you're getting the production from Zach Sealer, and Christian Wilkins wants more than Zach Sealer when Sealer already got paid, it's almost like you paying for a brand name instead. You see what I'm saying? So for all of our listeners in the United States, shout out to Kadeem. Tell everybody we from Kadeem.
If you haven't guessed by the accent, I'm from London, UK, born and raised.
So Kadeem, over here we got Walmart, right? And Walmart has a brand. Y'all got Walmart over here?
No, but I know of Walmart, Target, like I know the places.
All right, cool. So we got Walmart over here, and there's a great value version of like supposed to be like low budgeted stuff, right? So Christian Wilkins is more of the name brand, and Zach Sealer is basically the same thing Christian Wilkins is, but the great value version, and with the same production. Matter of fact, maybe more. You can argue that Sealer is the better player than Christian Wilkins, and we got him for the better price. So I was never a fan of signing Wilkins long term, but this is what happens, bro. You hope you could win, and for the past couple seasons, see some of your favorite Miami Dolphins send them off with a championship. Like, man, I wish Mike Gesicki would have got a ring. You know what I'm saying? So you say, thanks, Mike Gesicki. At least you got a championship before you left. But that didn't happen. Same thing with Xavier Howard and some of our favorite Dolphin players. Like, man, I wish these boys could have got their championship before they left. But it's unfortunate. And now this is where we are.
Yeah. So as Charlie mentioned earlier, the first of the dominoes, especially on Monday today, was friend of the podcast, Brandon Jones, joined the Denver Broncos 3-year, $20 million deal. I think that's probably, with all of these players, it was essentially too much for what Miami wanted to pay or willing to pay. $3 million for 3-year, $20 million deal for Brandon Jones, to me, seems somewhat reasonable. But I also think for Miami, given where they are with the cap, it's like we can't match that. And listen, after 4 great years, go burn that money. So Brandon Jones, friend of the podcast, Brandon Jones goes first. The major one is Christian Wilkins goes to the Raiders, 4 years, $110 million with the guarantees. Let me double check this.
Something like 85 or 87 guaranteed, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 85. So let's double check. I don't want to get this figure wrong. And you'll see me looking at my phone quite a lot, just trying to see if anything breaks. But yeah, 4 year, 110 mil, 84.75 mil. But essentially, 4 years, you're looking at 27.5 mil. Listen, I wanted Christian Wilkins to return at 27.5 mil per year. No, like that's just not going to work. Christian Wilkins is getting paid wide receiver money, and he's a defensive tackle. And same way that Christian Wilkins, while I think is a great player, benefited a lot from that entire essentially front 4/front 7, having Zach Sealer to one side of him, and then like friend of the podcast Bradley Chubb rushing off the edge and Jalen Phillips rushing off the edge.
You also benefited from those DBs being back there. So you not only did you got Phillips on one side and Chubb on the other side, you still had one of the best DB core in the league, and you still didn't get off the way we really wanted you to get off. And this isn't like a send off of, oh, we didn't need Christian Wilkins anyway. Nah, bro, we want to see our homegrown talent, like our drafted players. We drafted these players. We don't want them to go anywhere. We rather pay them. But at the same time, it's like, well, let's be real. Who did he have around him? So it's unfortunate that we have to see some of these people go. But some of these boys could be replaced, and Christian Wilkins, in my opinion, was one of them.
Yeah, and yeah, like I said, Wilkins, shout out to 5 Yard Lee, who jumped in the show last week, before free agency really got going and stuff like that. And he made a really valid point, which is when you pay high end, top dollar for a free agent, you're probably never going to get that money back in terms of production. Like Christian Wilkins being paid essentially between 22 and 27 mil per year. I need you to be getting 20 sacks a season. And I don't think that's unfair to say. If Christian Wilkins has a disruptive year like what he had in Miami and gets 10 sacks and loads of run stops, to me, that's not worth 27 mil. I don't think that's unfair to say. So, genuinely, shout out to Christian Wilkins. We will see you in Miami. The Raiders play in Miami this year. Going to be very interesting to see how he acts, and how the Dolphins, essentially scheme to make sure Christian Wilkins isn't a factor.
Bro, you hit it on the head. You hit it on the head, bro. When you get paid that type of money, we expect passing, like pass defensive, pass. What's the proper way to say it? Well, we need sacks. You know what I'm saying? we need pass. We need your passing defense needs to be on point. You're a run stopping D lineman, cool. But when you get paid that much, you're getting paid like what quarterbacks used to get paid. It's like, nah, bro. If you look at the top D tackles, they're pass defenders. You see what I'm saying? So Christian Wilkins is not a pass defender. He was nice though, bro. He's gonna be missed. He was nice, but the train has to move on.
100%. Shout out Kevin Clement says, for me, Wilkins never lived up to the hype for him and his draft positions. I think Wilkins leaves Miami with like 22.5 sacks over 5 years, which averages to just over 5 sacks per season. Again, the production for 27 mil a year, not for me. Shout out to Manolo Rivera. He says, hello, boys. Shout out to everyone on YouTube. Shout out to everyone on Twitter. If you haven't left a like yet on the video, make sure you do so. If you're watching or if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcast from, give us a 5-star review. It's greatly appreciated. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or now X, I guess. All the social medias. And if you're feeling generous, you can subscribe on Patreon /GoTimeDolphins. Also, shout out to YouTube, finally recognize us. So if you're feeling generous on YouTube, you can leave a super chat. But again, we appreciate all of our loyal listeners and our patrons. So
hey, usually Kadeem must be like, oh, shout us out on social media, follow us on IG, Twitter, Snapchat, Bumble, POF, Hinge. You know what I'm saying? Kadeem cut it short. I like, why we cutting it short, Kadeem?
I'm cutting it short because the Dolphins are cutting it short because obviously Christian Wilkins goes. After Wilkins, I believe Andrew Van Ginkel. Andrew Van Ginkel joins Minnesota. He's a Viking, 2-year, 20 mil deal, 14 mil guaranteed. That was the one where I was like, you telling me we couldn't get that done? Now, again, obviously, the Dolphins are 20 mil over the cap. They need to get under. We know Teron Armstead is staying. He's restructuring his contract. But 7 mil over 2 years seems very... We can find that money. 7 mil is probably what you're going to pay for, I don't know, 1 or 2 players. And I think their production probably won't match what Van Ginkel, has shown in Miami. But again, listen, if the Dolphins can't afford it and Van Ginkel shouldn't have been here the season just gone. He left and he came back. And listen, we couldn't double the chip. It's unfortunate. But shout out to Van Ginkel. He got his money.
I was telling Bert was, hey, I ain't gonna lie, Bert was over here laying on the floor like perturbed, like he was mad, he was upset. I like, Bert, bro, we can't keep everybody, we can't pay everybody. And then Bert was saying, I ain't never seen Bert look like this, bro. Like when it came to the Dolphins and moves that we're making, I never seen him care so much. You feel me? And reality was we weren't even supposed to have Van Ginkel this year. He came back on a discount this season. And I'm like, yo, I don't know how we were able to retain Van Ginkel for even a year. So this year, we just knew we weren't going to be able to keep Van Ginkel. And this happens to be the year that we need him now because Bradley Chubb and Phillips is out. Jalen Phillips is out. They probably won't even be back halfway through the season. So you would have hoped you could retain Van Ginkel, but it's just not realistic. So good thing for us though, and it's not a good thing for us.
Yeah, it's
and we say friend of the podcast. For anyone who doesn't know who our friends of the podcast are, we've had Javon Holland on the podcast. Shout out to friend of the podcast, Javon Holland. Shout out to William Hayes, former Miami Dolphin. Shout out to former Miami Dolphin OJ McDuffie. It's a pretty list. It's a pretty good list. So we're not gonna name them all, but we have some friends of the podcast, and so when you hear the term, that's what we're talking about. And friend of the podcast, Robert Hunt. Probably one of my favorite stories of how we met Robert Hunt, and he's no longer going to be a Miami Dolphin. And I ain't reach out to him yet, but I will. I try not to be like, I try to give it some time. It's not like we like really cool, close friends or nothing like that. So I'm not trying to be that guy in the dude's phone. But at the same time, man, I just want to reach out to these boys and be like, look, bro, we appreciate your time here in Miami. Like, I know the fandom can get out of control and overwhelming at times, especially on Twitter, the foolishness that you see on Twitter. But, man, I would have loved to keep Robert Hunt, because what we need more so than anything is the dig in the trenches, because that's where the game starts. And to keep Tua upright. For everyone who says, oh, Tua doesn't make plays off script, or he's not an off script quarterback. Well, if he's not an off script quarterback, you got to keep him upright. You know what I'm saying? Look at what Jalen Hurts did with the #1 offensive line in the league. Took him to the Super Bowl. Suddenly, Jalen Hurts don't look like that same Jalen Hurts that took the Eagles to the Super Bowl. So if you want to keep Tua upright and you want your chances of winning to be better, you got to put protection around him. So the fact that we're going to lose protection in this offseason doesn't sit well with me, but the draft is littered with O-linemen. And I'm talking about, you're going to find first-round O-linemen in the second round. So we just got to hit on these guys now, because we need multiple O-linemen right now. We lost Connor Williams. Even if Connor Williams stays in Miami, he's not going to be healthy for the first 8 weeks of the season. We're losing friend of the podcast, Robert Hunt. Teron Armstead is a shell of himself. And what are we doing at left guard? So this is not a good time to not be solidified in your O-line right now, Kadeem.
Especially the interior. Like, the Dolphins are probably going to have an entire new interior. Like, that is mental. However, so yeah, friend of the podcast, Robert Hunt, is joining the Washington Commanders. Washington Commanders?
I think it's Carolina Panthers.
Sorry, Carolina Panthers. 5 years, $100 million. Yo, that is bread. That is mental. And again, I think we'll delve into Chris Grier a bit later, but the one narrative is that Chris Grier can't draft. Listen, Brandon Jones, Robert Hunt, Christian Wilkins, and Andrew Van Ginkel have just gone for a combined $250 million with $174.25 million guaranteed. Tell me Chris Grier can't draft. And then also tell me that Miami were going to give $250 million to those 4 players. That is insane. Like, 2 things can't be true. These guys can't be worth that kind of money if Chris Grier can't draft. Like, it's unfortunate. Like, when you draft well, that's what happens. Now, for anyone saying that those guys should take hometown discounts or take a discount to stay in Miami, no one is turning down $100 million over 5 years to take a discount. Like, dude, it's not happening.
Hey, so, you seen the movie SWAT?
That the one with
LL Cool J and Samuel L. Jackson?
I've seen SWAT.
With the criminal, he's like, I'll give you $100 million for whoever breaks me out of here. And then the camera's on him and he says, $100 million. and that's I kind of want to text Robert Hunt that right now. $100 million. You know what I'm saying? But we're not cool like that. But shout out to friend of the podcast, man. Go get the bread, bro. And what you said, Kadeem, you can't say Chris Grier doesn't draft well, and then all these boys is getting paid, and rightfully so. You know what I'm saying? And we wanted to retain them. So 2 things can't be true in this case at the same time. And we did not even touch on QB1 is going to get his bread. And when that happens, the internet's going to break. He's going to get paid. And all the anti-Tuas are going to say, yo, we lost this player, that player, that player, that player, and that player to pay Tua X amount of dollars. And it's going to happen. And guess what? Chris Grier drafted Tua as well. So, again, it's a lot going on. And the facts are the facts, and you got to show up on Sundays and you got to play ball, and that's where we are right now. It's unfortunate that we haven't been healthy the past 2 years in the playoffs. Is an excuse? I don't know, but realistically, you didn't have a quarterback the first time they made the playoffs, and then you didn't have a defense or two receivers. Your top two receivers, wide receiver 1 and 2, were limping around in a below zero frostbite game. Where did you see the breaking news? Well, not breaking news. Did you hear the news on some of the fans that were advised to have amputations?
Yeah, listen, genuinely, yeah, I love sports. Like we do this. Like we love sports. Charlie, in below freezing conditions, why's your shirt off? Like no one loves sports that much. No one can love sports that much that it's below freezing conditions and you're there topless. I'm sorry, you deserve what comes to you.
Listen, so for those who don't know, I went to the Kansas City Dolphins, right, playoffs, right, and I got a couple pictures, a couple dope pictures, and I'm not gonna lie to you. When I asked someone to take a picture of me, because I was by myself, when I asked someone to take a picture of me, I felt kind of bad for the person because they had to endure taking off their gloves to take the picture of me. I'm like, you know what? I got it. We got the pick. I'll find one of these. You know what I'm saying? Just put your gloves back on, bro. I don't want you to feel crazy. You know what I'm saying? So, listen, at the end of the day, Coach McDaniel, people like to say, oh, Coach McDaniel inherited a playoff team, but he didn't inherit a playoff team. Flores did not take the Dolphins to the playoffs. So McDaniel came in and took the Dolphins to 2 playoffs back to back. All right. This is where we are. Third time's a charm, and hopefully we get it done this time around.
Yeah. So that's who has left the Dolphins. The Dolphins have brought back Nick Needham, and they brought back the punter Jake Bailey, and everyone was kind of like, "You brought back the punter Jake Bailey." Now, I think his punting skills were below par. I don't think that is a stretch to say that. But he was the holder for Jason Sanders this season, and I think Jason Sanders had himself a quite spectacular year. So essentially, do you think paying Jake Bailey to hold the ball is worth what the Dolphins are going to get when he punched the ball?
You know what's crazy? There was a combine, the annual combine Chris Grier interview. All the GMs get interviewed, right? It's like season. There's like 4 mandatory yearly interviews for GMs. And Chris Grier said something. Oh, it was McDaniel who said this, actually. But Chris Grier said some things too in that interview. But McDaniel said this at the combine. And they were talking about the special teams coach, how he was underwhelming, performed like it was a lackluster performance, and fans were unsure about, should we bring dude back? It's been like 2 seasons and we were unsure about the special teams coach. And then McDaniel said something that I was like, you know what? That's fair. The same way we have offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators, and we say, well, look what they're working with. You know what I'm saying? Like, do they have the players to be successful? They say it all the time, right? It's fair for us to be sitting here on a podcast and it just be the average fans, people who's listening to the podcast. It's fair to say that we don't know if the special teams coach has what he needs to be successful. It's fair to say that. It's easier to see it when it's defense and offense, and do they have a quarterback? Do we have an O-line? It's easier to see that. But it was, I had to take self-awareness goes a long way. I like, you know what? You're right, Coach McDrip. I don't know if he has enough to be successful on special teams. But the punter, Kadeem, I know a good punt when I see one, and I know a bad punt when I see one. That's all I'm gonna say. You feel me? So that's where we at, man. And hey, if we're paying him to be the holder for Jason Sanders, I just need Jason Sanders to perform like he did last year. That's all I'm saying.
I think like his money is so minimal. I wouldn't be surprised if there's competition in training camp, and and if he loses, Dolphins say, you know what, you've lost, like off you go. Like it's not like they've given him so much money that he has to be there. It's hey, we've and again, listen, if the Dolphins didn't retain Jake Bailey, I don't think anyone would have really cared. But the Dolphins, at the very least, head into the draft free agency with another position secured. We don't like it, but it means you don't have to go and spend probably even more on a punter, if that makes sense. Like, unless you're going to get Thomas Morstead back, Matt Ariaza has joined the Chiefs. It's like, who, and unless you're Ollie Hodgkinson, shout out Ollie Hodgkinson, unless you're a true special teams guy like him, you couldn't tell me what punter is available. So yeah, and I'm just looking.
Shout out to the Dolphins retaining friend of the podcast, Elijah Campbell. Got to get friend of the podcast on the podcast for that one.
100%. But yeah, so obviously we've lost all the players. The Dolphins have to replace those players, plus still find depth at wide receiver, at safety, with all that kind of stuff. Barry Jackson just tweeted, Dolphins need 2 starting defensive tackles. I somewhat disagree. I know you've lost Raekwon Davis as well, although you brought in Isaiah Mack from the Ravens. So yeah, but the Dolphins need defensive tackle, starting corner if they're not planning on starting Cam Smith. That's for another day. Starting safety, because obviously Brandon Jones is gone, Deshaun Elliott hasn't returned. 2 starting guards, a starting center, a starting linebacker, and 2 edge players, and probably 3 backup wide receivers, and $20 million over the cap, and have 5 draft picks. Good luck.
Hey, listen, I can't wait for the NFL to get back to the day where punters are no longer placeholders. You know what I'm saying? And the backup quarterback holds the ball for the kicker, and then it's more like fake field goals. The reason that doesn't happen is because they're a unit, and punters and long snappers and kickers all practice together. So that's why you don't see like quarterbacks holding the snap anymore. But I can't. Those were the good old days. I ain't gonna lie to you. You might see the Romo drop field goal snap. It's some really good stuff back in the day. But yeah, man. You got something for us for bonus time, Kadeem? You want to get a bonus time? You got something else?
No, we can get the bonus time. It's essentially the Dolphins, as of right now, haven't signed no one. I would not be surprised if the Dolphins don't sign no one, but there's still players available. And yeah, we could talk about who is available that's remaining in bonus time.
Kadeem, Chris Grier put together, for my dollar and for your pound, the best Miami Dolphins roster we've ever had in the history of the franchise. And he did it again in back-to-back seasons. I'm okay with trusting Chris Grier and his vision, and Coach McDaniel, one of the best play callers in the NFL, to take us back to the playoffs and hopefully win a game this year. We need more than just a playoff win. We need to make some noise in the playoffs this year. And I'm unshakable faith in the Miami Dolphins, bro. Like, we're gonna get it together. We're gonna get it fixed. And y'all already know what time it is. Stay positive, test negative. For Kadeem Simmons, I'm Charlie Touche. Thank you for tuning in this time. Make sure you catch us next time on Go Time. Already.
Gotta make them lose their mind when it's your time. And it's show time. Going all out when it's go time. I ain't wasting no time. Gotta make them lose their mind when it's show time. Cause it's your time. Lay it on the line when it's go time. Don't waste no time. Gotta make them lose their mind when it's your time. And it's show time. Going all out when it's go time. I ain't wasting no time.
So yeah, we've mentioned the guys who have left. Again, shout out to everyone who joined us on YouTube. Everyone who's watching us on Twitter. I think there's like 83 people on Twitter, and then YouTube, all the guys in the YouTube comments, all that kind of stuff. Who's available left in free agency? So Gabe Davis has joined the Falcons. Is the Falcons? No, the Jags. Gabe Davis has joined the Jags. Mitch Morse, the center who left the Bills, has joined the Jags. But I mentioned Gabe Davis because Calvin Ridley is a free agent. Saquon Barkley has joined the Eagles. Like, just how. Josh Jacobs is a. Where did Josh Jacobs go? We mentioned this earlier. Josh
Jacobs went to the Packers.
To the Packers, yes. Aaron Jones is a free agent. Apparently, the Packers are going to release Aaron Jones. Now, I think part of the reason the Dolphins also didn't retain some of their talent is because I think Chris Grier wants to start getting involved in the compensatory picks, and the Dolphins just haven't had comp picks since like 2020. I think as it stands right now, if Christian Wilkins and Brandon Jones play next year, that's a third and a fourth coming back. So the Dolphins aren't going to go and pay one of them the money to, but they aren't going to go and get some of these top free agents. Shout out to Manolo Rivera said hit the like button. Yes, please do hit that like button. So yeah, it's essentially people left still in free agency. Like I said, we've got Bradley Bozeman, who was the center at Alabama for Tua. I spoke very highly of him, and they're both at Alabama. Calvin Ridley, Saquon Barkley's available. Isaiah Winston.
Saquon, I think Saquon's on Philly.
Sorry, Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's available. Austin Eckler's available. Like, there are guys available if the Dolphins really want to bring in some talent. Devontae Parker's available. He's just been released by the Patriots.
Chill out, bro. That's why I come in at right there. That's why.
But very, very quickly, we didn't mention it. The Dolphins did bring in Johnny Smith to tight end. So tight end is
shout out the Florida International University graduate John Smith. Well, actually, I don't know if he graduated or not. He probably could have went out early. But shout out to John Smith coming back home to Florida. Listen, I don't think the Dolphins are going to be active in free agency. I never thought they would be this season because we're not in that, like, we got to build up from the, whatever position. Like, we're almost there, bro. You just got to win these games when you get presented with them. Yeah, the injury bug is a legit thing, but if you win one of those games in the last, we won one game in the last 5 weeks. If you win 2 games in 5 weeks, you have a home playoff game. And then it's a whole different story. You're not talking about the cold weather. So you were in a position, you were the most entertaining team in the first 13 weeks of the NFL season. You got to figure out a way to keep that train going. You know what I'm saying? I don't believe in peaking too early. I believe you could get it done. You got to find a way to get it done. So you have a home playoff game. It's a whole different ball game, whole different story. And we're not having this podcast like this. So no, I don't think we're going to be active in free agency, but I do think we're going to fill some holes in the draft. But I also think there are going to be players who will take less to play for a playoff team and play in the city of Miami and no state taxes in Florida. I think you will see that for sure. Something interesting to me, Calvin Ridley, we're not going to get Calvin Ridley. All right. It would have been nice. We're not getting Calvin Ridley. I can't. What's up with the Trevor Lawrence heads? You know what I'm saying? That we'll say that for the whole nother episode. You know what I'm saying? What's going on with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville? But McCorkle Jones went to back him up. So my thing is, there's a chance Michael Thomas becomes available, and he could be the ideal third receiver for the Miami Dolphins. I'm not saying like this is what this is plan A. But there's some things, Kadeem, I mentioned the clearance rack, the discount rack, you know what I'm saying? The buy one, get one. That's what we're shopping at right now in free agency because we don't need the big splashes right now. So I still think things will get done. I believe the product that we're going to put on the field come September is still going to be top notch. And I believe we're going to have a top 5 offense once again.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Jason Keck just joining us over here on YouTube. And shout out to Keith, says, have to be active in the second round of free agency. Just too many holes to fill, especially on the O-line and edge rush. And then Manolo said, yeah. Grier said no big splash free agent this year. I know, Charlie, you're not a fan of Jadeveon Clowney. I can see Clowney joining Miami. We spoke about this before. I can see Ndamukong Suh potentially on a 1-year deal. And again, it's not going to be, the elite of the elite here for 3 to 4 to 5 years. It's not going to be that. I genuinely think, and this is just me, I think Patrick Queen is an option. I think it's whether Miami are willing to outspend Seattle, because obviously Will McDonald has gone to Seattle. He was the former Ravens DC, and I think that's probably going to play a factor as whether does he want to join Weaver in Miami or McDonald in Seattle. But again, who knows? There's Frankie Louvu, the linebacker from the Panthers. Like, there's guys available. It's just not going to be Dolphins have one free agency, which again, unfortunately, the Dolphins don't have the cap space to do that. But you can definitely find players to plug the holes so that when you get to the draft, you're able to take best player available. And again, it's looking down the line. I don't want to get too far into this, but if there's one thing to take from this year's free agency, Miami sign Jalen Waddle, Jalen Phillips, and Javon Holland this year. Do not let it wait to get till next year. You don't have the fifth-year option for friend of the podcast Javon Holland. So if you don't get it done this year, you either have to franchise tag him or let him walk. That's just something I don't think they should do. While you have Phillips and Waddle with fifth-year options, you just fifth-year optioned Christian Wilkins, and he got paid money. I don't think you should fifth-year option those guys. I think you should get a deal done before they get too expensive. But the flip side to that, do not be surprised if in the first round of the draft, the Dolphins go wide receiver or edge rusher. Like, the Dolphins need to start replacing some of these guys. And with a first and second round pick and nothing again to the fifth, with the talent, like you said, on the offensive line, wide receiver, all that kind of stuff, I think the Dolphins just going to go, hey, this wide receiver here is too good to not pass up. And he's the third option behind Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill this year.
I think if you retain Robert Hunt, that would have been possible. Losing Robert Hunt, I seriously doubt we go anything but O-line in the first round. I cannot see us going anything but O-line in the first round now that we lost Robert Hunt. Listen, it's Go Time Dolphins. We're here 3 times a week. Again, we're back 3 times a week. We're going to get it done for y'all. Find out what we think about free agency. Find out what we think about the draft. Find out mock draft season is upon us. So, yeah, man. What else you got for us before we get up out of here, Kadeem?
Before you head off, or before you go spend your evening, go back and check out our previous episodes. We just had Geronimo Allison on talking about why he should be a Dolphin playing with the Packers. Definitely go check that out. I think it was Kevin earlier. Let's double check. He said Kevin Clements. This podcast always gets great guests more than any other big channel. That's why I'm always loyal to you. Like we said, friend of the podcast, Javon Holland, friend of the podcast, Miles Gaskin, friend of the podcast, AJ McDuffie, friend of the podcast, Will Hayes, friend of the podcast, Geronimo Addison. And we're also getting some NFL draft players coming on the pod very, very shortly. That's the plan anyway. So subscribe to the channel, follow us on all the social medias, and go back and watch our old content. That's it for me. Charlie, anything else?
Appreciate you, Kevin. We love y'all too.
Peace.